Hello, welcome to Prop Scale Aircraft Model Builders. My name is Joel Z. Williams, and today I'm going to do tutorial 8. What we're going to do is we're going to put the final touches on the Japanese Mitsubishi A6M3 Zero. Some of the things that I wanted to teach you today is the movement and preparation. Whenever you're working on your scale models, I think it was Horace, the ancient Roman poet and lecturer, who said any project well prepared, once prepared properly, is already half done. If you engage your model aircraft building in that manner, if you get your water together, your paint together, your thinner, all of the tools that you're going to use, and you look at your build sheet prior to engaging in building the model, and before you sit at your workbench, before you actually engage in it, if you prep your area, get your area together and have a game plan in mind. Okay, today I'm going to put in the pitot tube. Today I'm going to put on the cowling for the engine. Today I'm going to fix the propeller. Things of that nature. If you go into it with a game plan, you're going to save yourself a lot of time. And in aircraft building, model building, even if you're building model cars, any any endeavor, if you go at it with a prepared plan, you're going to move a lot faster. And when you're scale model building, you have to hustle. You have to move quickly. You have to look at every minute that you're doing it as precious time that you'll never get back again. And that's probably one of the lessons that I think a lot of the instructors that teach the scale model building don't emphasize. You have to be moving. And in order to really move from project to project, I mean, you're working on one goal, one total thing, but there's sub-projects. There's things that you're gonna have to do to prepare the area or to prepare your paint. Think about that before you actually sit down at your workbench, and you're gonna save yourself a lot of trouble and a lot of time. Okay, thank you. Welcome to tutorial 8. Let's get started. Okay, as you can see here, we've already completed the majority of the assembly and paint and decal. So earlier what I did is I put this fuselage decal on, the red stripe on the fuselage. Very difficult thing to do. It was a lot harder than I had anticipated. Again, that's why you have to move quickly, because you're going to be beset by a myriad of delays and hassles and workarounds, and if you attack it quickly for every task that you have to do, you're going to get this project done sooner. Okay, as you can see, we've already painted the yellow identification stripes here. Here's a tool that I wanted to show you. This is the pin-vise. This is known as a pin-vise, and all it really is a way to put a small drill bit into your hand instead of using a mechanical drill. As you can see, this one has a rotating buttstock so that you can really bear down on it. If you have to, it will turn in your hand and you can really put some pressure on. That's not necessary for most scale model building, but here we have the 20 millimeter holes for the gun in this Japanese Zero, and we want to kind of try to ream that out. We want to kind of try to make those holes more pronounced. And with the pin vise, and I believe this is maybe a 1/64 inch bit, you're going to really be able to see those holes more clearly after we punch through there with the pin vise. And as you go through there, you're going to kind of try to ream it out. You're going to kind of twist it around and get some of that plastic out of there. So there you go. You got the holes. They're a lot more visible. There's a pitot tube, or is it airspeed tube? Some people call it. Here on the wing, you're going to ream that out as well. Okay. Now that you've made those holes a little bigger, find your pitot tube, and we've already, for the sake of brevity, I've already gone ahead and painted that. It gets painted a metallic silver color, and you can see here it's on my sprue tree. And I use the flush cut plier cutters here, flush cut cutters, because it makes things a lot easier once you get it off the tree. There's a lot less sanding that is required. A lot less. You can see here where it was attached to the sprue, and you know you're going to keep files around. Here's a good file. And I like these Revlon nail files. One side is pretty coarse, the other side is very fine. I like it because they're tapered and they're very small to hold in the hand. But you kind of want to file that excess plastic away where it was attached to the sprue. And it doesn't really take much. You get that off of there. Okay, good. Now that you have your hole enlarged, go ahead and take you, and I like the Bob Smith glue. This is a good time. This is a good teaching moment. Let me tell you about some mistakes that I made, and hopefully you'll use this to your advantage. I went out and I saw this Tamiya extra thin cement. Came highly recommended on Amazon. Has a really good applicator with kind of looks like nail polish almost. But the fact of the matter is, this is still cement. This is still plastic cement. It takes a long time to set up. It doesn't really hold that well, and because it's extra thin, it just really doesn't bond that well. I kept this glue because I paid so much for it. I think I paid almost $10, maybe $12 to get this glue delivered to me. But to me, I never use it because it just doesn't keep a good bond, and it really isn't worthless to me now. What I have discovered is this glue here. This is made by Bob Smith Industries. It's favored by the RC group, the radio controlled aircraft group, because it is cyanoacrylate. And what that means is this is super glue, essentially. And super glue is the real deal. This bonds plastic together very tightly. As you can see here, I'm gonna have to open it with a safety pin. I'm gonna have to puncture that. After you used it for a while, you're gonna have to. When it dries very hard, and that's the point I'm trying to make here. This will make a bond that is going to last, as opposed to the cement. I don't even know where I put it now, but don't buy that. Don't fall for that extra thin. Go ahead and get you some Bob Smith glue, and get you some applicators. Zap, I think, is the company that makes the glue tips. But buy the glue tips, and it will allow you to put just the right amount, just a smidgen where you need it. You have more control over it, and the cyanoacrylate will start bonding immediately. Like the where is it? The Tamiya. The extra thin cement, this takes hours to set up. It takes hours to cure. Whereas the Bob Smith, within seconds, this super glue is already bonding. Alright? So let that be a lesson to you. This costs about the same as this, but much more useful. And somebody drops your model. The first aircraft model I ever built, I used this Tamiya extra thin glue to put on rockets and bond. I built an F-15E model, and I took it to my job, and people were handling it. You know, ooh, that's a nice, cool model. And just by handling it, just by touching it, after the glue had time to dry and cure, parts were falling off all over the place. And to me, it's not worth it. If you're going to go ahead and spend the money, spend the same amount of money and get you some of this Bob Smith industry stuff. This is the real deal. All right. Now, as you can see, we have some, we want to put this pitot tube, for example. We want to put this pitot tube into the wing root. So what we're going to go ahead and do is prep that, that hole. And I don't know if you can see it, but this thing, these zap tips really let you apply just a smidgen of glue where you need it to the appropriate application. And because we've already bored that hole out, this installation should go fairly easy. So there we go. Bingo. And I'll tell you what, that thing is not going anywhere. Within 30 seconds, that thing will be set up hard, won't move, won't budge, won't fall out no matter how hard you move it. And that's a blessing. Okay, so let's go ahead and get the engine cowling on. As you can see, I've already put the engine cowling together, and it's time to go ahead and affix it to over the radial engines, put it on here. And I'm going to go ahead and take a little Bob Smith glue and put it on. You got to kind of squeeze it hard sometimes, but get that capillary action going in that zap tip. Because you don't want people handling your model and it disintegrating, coming to pieces, you know. And that's the first thing people are going to want to do. They're going to want to pick it up. They're going to want to lift it. They're going to want to fly it around, fly it around. And you don't need to really bear down on it. You're just going to kind of want to put it on there. Let the glue set. Don't worry about that. And then we're going to put on our propeller. We've already painted and attached the decals to the propeller. Now this is going to be a fixed propeller. Most propellers I put on, I engineer them so they won't move around. But on this particular model, this is going to be a static display, so I don't want the propeller to move. It's very rare that I do that. But in this particular application, because I'm going to put it on a pedestal mount, I don't want it to move around at all, so I want it to be very firm. And I'll go ahead and glue that propeller in place. So there you have it. Now, we've already, this is one of the mistakes that I wanted to show you, and this is one of the mistakes that most model builders will encounter. You'll encounter 100 mistakes, but how you recover from your mistakes is very telling. What we're doing here with this particular aircraft is we're going gears up. So the aircraft landing gear are supposed to be in the stowed position. That's the way that we're going to present this aircraft. But if you notice, the rear tail wheel is extended. That's not by choice. Tamiya, for some reason, when I went to grab the wheel that was for the up position, it broke into 2 or 3 pieces, and it was unsalvageable. I could not, no matter how much I tried, I couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. And you'll find that in scale model building, you will encounter situations like that, and how you approach those situations depends on how accurate you want this model to look. Now, most people would tell you if the tail landing gear is in the downward position, and these main landing gear would not be in the stowed position. But you know what? That is such a very small thing. It doesn't really matter. It's not going to detract from it. If you're not entering it in a competition, you're just going to have it around your house, or maybe give this model to your friends. It doesn't matter. So the point I'm trying to make here is you are going to encounter mistakes that are insurmountable. There's no way I can fix that. Even if I were to sand it down, it would not look proper. So I'm going to embrace the mistake. And I know that a lot of people are perfectionists, and they'll tell me, well, that's not possible. I'll probably get a lot of email about that. The tail landing gear is down and the main landing gear is up. That would never have happened. That's fine. You know, let critics be critics. Let haters hate. But what you know in your heart is you made a good faith effort. It doesn't really detract from the aesthetic value of the model. It's not a game ender. You are going to have mistakes. You are going to encounter things that are, to use an Air Force term, that are hard broke. They're broken beyond repair. There's nothing you can do about it. You have to, as a scale model aircraft builder, you have to embrace that. You have to assume that that's going to happen. And you know what? It's still a beautiful looking model. So what? Move on. Okay, so thank you for allowing me to make that point. We got one more thing to do here. We've prepped the canopy. Now, when the canopy on this A6M3, one of the things that was really distinctive about it is it had this birdcage design. And what I could call it is, I give it that name, birdcage, but let me show you the build sheet. Okay, here we are. So here's the artist's representation of what that should be, and so you can see they're little square panes of glass, and they're not very square. In some places they're asymmetrical. So this took a lot of time, and I'm not going to lie about that. You are going to have to take some of your Tamiya tape and use your X-Acto knife and cut these things into small blocks, or maybe even use your flush cut clippers. But you're going to take a long time, and it's going to be a very arduous process. But you're going to have to affix each one of those panes, one of those tapes to those panes, and get it precise, because you want to spray paint it and make it look authentic. And so this level, your mileage may vary, but it took me a full hour. This past weekend, I spent a full hour getting that cockpit masked off. It's a very difficult task. So I'm not gonna lie to you, there are no shortcuts when it comes to canopy. Canopy is of course it's on the top of the aircraft, so it's going to be one of the most visible things. It's going to be one of the first things that people see. Going back to my dissertation on the tail hook or the tail wheel, not many people are really going to pay much attention to that. So I'm not going to sweat that. Anytime you spend on your building your scale model aircraft is valuable time, precious time. Don't squander the time to fix this. Rather, spend that quality time working on something that's going to be very visible and most people are going to pay attention to. We have it masked off. One of the techniques that I want to show you here is whenever you apply any kind of air pressure, you're going to get things moving around. And for that matter, I just use a pretty wide piece of masking tape, kind of fold it over like that. That'll do well. And you kind of just want to put that in the center of your paper plate, or even a paper towel, whatever you use, and kind of sit your canopy down in the center. That way, when you actually spray it, it's not going to be moving around a lot. Now this is the Tamiya brand, and this is the particular bamboo green color that the model calls for in a rattle can. So we're going to go ahead and shake that up pretty good. I like to bang it against the heel of my hand. You want to just make sure you get a good distribution of the pigment and the media that is in there. And go ahead and get that dispersed pretty well. And we're going to go ahead and spray this bad boy. Now, some of the techniques that I want to show you when using a rattle can is you don't have to. Some people think you need to really pile on a whole bunch of paint. You don't really have to. The best method is to kind of gradually sneak up on it in short spurts and kind of get it a good coating in short kind of hyper spurts, you know. Okay, and that's sufficient. You don't need to go overboard. Any more than that, you're going to start seeing runs. And runs are the death of a canopy job. So you would rather err on the be cautious. You know, if you're going to spray it, rather come back to it tomorrow. You know, allow it to dry, come back to it tomorrow, come back to it the next day. You know, spray the 10 coats over the course of a week, rather than to try to get everything done on it right now. Okay, now the last thing I really wanted to show, we're going to set that over here to dry. This will definitely take at least, I missed a spot. Okay, now this is going to take at least 8 hours to cure. So we're just going to set that aside. And that's one of the things I like these paper plates for, because they're easy to move around. You can stack them up. You can put them places. If you got a paper towel, it's a lot harder to handle. Go ahead and use paper plates because, of course, they're disposable, but they're also highly portable. You can move stuff around. Okay, so we got that done. Now, one of the things I failed to mention in my last video is this camouflage pattern is not conducive to the decals that are on here. These decals are not quite set. And what I mean by that is Microsol has a two-part decal system. You're going to use the Microset to actually apply. It's kind of a vinegar and water-based decal setting. You're going to kind of use that to make it adhere, make the glue that is on the bottom of the decal kind of adhere, but they're really not. They're kind of just floating. If you were to look at it under a microscope, they're not really adhering to the actual polystyrene plastic underbase. They're really not sticking. They're as they are now. They could still be moved around. They could still, with rough handling or even bad weather, a humid room, they can still move around. What the step 2 does is it actually kind of melts that decal, almost kind of melts it into the polystyrene undercoating. And so for that reason, what we're going to do, and we're going to go ahead and take a brush and we're going to apply some of this Microsol setting solution, and in the hopes that it will permanently affix those decals to the polystyrene underbase. And to apply that, I like to use the Filbert brush. Again, I'm a history. When I was in college, I was a history major, so you're going to get a little history lesson. The Filbert brush comes from the name named for the French word for acorn, actually. So it was actually it's named for a French monk that was known to live off of acorns. So that's where we get hence the name Filbert. But as you can see, it's almost a square looking brush with a very broad tip. It's as opposed to the very sharp pointed brush. This is a brush that is designed to apply a lot of liquid or whatever over a large base. Okay, so there's your history lesson for today. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and dip that Filbert brush into that Microsol setting solution, and we're going to go ahead and try to get some of that on these decals that we have already put on there with the number 1 solution. And like I said, you don't have to be brute. You don't have to use brute force to do this. Matter of fact, it's best if you do it very gingerly. You don't want to move things around. As you already have them set, what you want to do is make that decal melt into that plastic, and it'll look like paint. It'll look like it's been painted on. That's the goal. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And you may take 2, 3, maybe 4 applications of this to get the desired effect. Your mileage may vary. And here's a good tip too on the, I'm going to show you here. On this Hinamaru, this meatball, if you will, the decal separated here. You can see, maybe I'm not in the camera. This decal started to separate here towards the back end, and you can see there's a little separation here in the middle. Now, there's 2 schools of thought. My first impression, my first mind, oh man, I gotta fix that. I gotta make that look better. I gotta do something to rectify that. And then I thought about it, and I go, you know what? That's weathering. That's what it would look like after it's been sitting in the sun, after this aircraft has been flying for a while. That's good weathering. That was a good turn of events. So I'm going to leave that there. For authenticity, it's going to make it look more authentic. And even here, you can see the flaw here where on the tail flash where the Arabic numeral 197, you can see that the 1 is kind of split in half here. I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to leave it. And that's going to add to this particular aircraft's unique color, this unique character. I'm going to go ahead and, you know, some people fret over these things. And the point I'm trying to make is don't sweat it. Don't worry about it. Your aircraft is going to be a little bit different than, it's going to be like a fingerprint. You know, everybody has a different fingerprint. Just because that fingerprint is different doesn't necessarily mean it's better. It's just different. It has its own character, own unique flavor. So we're going to go ahead and leave that there. So those are the tips that I wanted to show you. Tomorrow, we'll come back at it, and of course, I'll probably spray 2 or 3 more coats onto that canopy. But once we get that canopy done, we're going to apply that canopy to the model using a special glue. This is a clear part cement. Testers makes this, and it's really just a form of Elmer's glue. But I like this because it has a very good applicator, very narrow applicator, and it allows you to put this on. And what the difference between using a glue like this and, say, the Bob Smith Sino acrylic, it creates an effect called crazing, and crazing on clear plastic parts looks like it will give it a cloudy look, and you can avoid that by staying away from the cyanoacrylates or even the cements, and use a clear part cement, something particularly designed, specially designed to apply clear parts to polystyrene. So that's really what I wanted to tell you in this lecture. I think I've covered all the bases here. I think I said everything I needed to say here. And gosh, I feel like whenever I finish these videos, I always feel like I'm forgetting something. But we got everything. And one of the things in parting that I might add, when you're working on your scale model aircraft, take advantage of all the knowledge that others have, the others that have gone before you. Take advantage of that, because I can't express to you how many techniques, tips, tactics I've learned just by watching other videos of other people or seeing a reading material. Fine Scale Modeler magazine, very good source of information on how to build scale models. Research it. Do your due diligence. Look into it, especially if you're trying to do a particular model. And one thing, I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but whenever you can, for example, here is a model that I bought on Amazon, the Messerschmitt. This will be my next project. This model, I think, was $12 for the model. This is the 109. This is the German equivalent of the Japanese Zero. Buy 2 of them if you can. I mean, for $12, if you can afford 12 bucks, you probably can afford 24 bucks. Go ahead and buy 2 of the same model. A lot of people, I know I'm gonna get a lot of flack for it, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it. When you're starting out and you're new and you make a critical error, again, hard broke, something like the fuselage is not fitting with the wing root. Maybe you snap a propeller in half and you can't get the propeller to look right. The canopy, a lot of problems can happen with the canopy. If you have a spare to go to, it's going to make your scale model building experience a lot more bearable. And just for that reason, if you can afford it, especially with these cheaper models, I mean, nowadays they're coming out with models that are $10 a piece. Go ahead and buy 2. Save yourself the headache, save yourself the heartache, and go ahead and do it. In parting, thank you for watching these videos. Props, scale model building. My name is Joel Z. Williams. I hope you got something usable out of this video.